Welcome, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by. This time I'm coming your way to review I can't remember, I think it's kind of a relatively recent movie, something that I heard about back when it was even newer than it is now, and yeah, it's interesting what'll grab you and what won't. I didn't really, this kind of came and went, and I didn't, really have too much interest in seeing it. Cut to not long ago, Beth is like, oh, a coworker told me about this movie. I can't remember what title. She said 10,000 Beavers, and I looked at this. I'm like, oh, is that one? And then I looked it up, and turns out it's not 10,000 Beavers. I think it's actually a different title. But thanks to the miracle of modern technology, I was able to search 10,000 Beavers and come up with the real title, which is, if memory serves, stopping on by to review the motion picture by the name of Hundreds of Beavers. Is that the title? If that's not the title is right there on the theatrical poster. So one day, as I said, Beth is like, oh, a coworker told me about this interesting movie, and I don't think Beth will see this. Even if she does, hopefully she'll just laugh and not get mad. But then, when that happened, I'm like, oh great, coworker, that usually, not all the time, but more times often than not, a coworker recommending a movie is basically one of those non-movie enthusiasts kind of, what are they called nowadays? Normies? Just a casual, what I call a casual movie viewer, someone who's got like Anchorman DVD, Titanic DVD, they've got a Elf DVD, they've got a Spider-Man 2 DVD, they got, all just the basic titles. Zoolander, maybe they've got a Zoolander DVD. What other kind of, Top Gun, they've got Top Gun. Like just your casual movie viewer, just like The Mask from 1994, maybe they've got The Mask with Jim Carrey, Lion King. Mrs. Doubtfire. I'm just trying to think what would be on the shelf of a casual movie viewer's shelf, VHS back in the day, those kind of titles. And by the way, if you're watching and any of you happen to have any of these titles, I mean, I've got Top Gun. I don't like Top Gun, but I've got Top Gun. I've got some of these titles, not Mrs. Doubtfire. But if some of these titles are on your shelf, please don't be offended. I'm just trying to make a point where, me being a huge movie fanatic and a movie enthusiast, it's my contention working at Suncoast Motion Picture Company for 2 years in the 90s and video stores and things that, there's us movie fanatics, and then there's most, I'd say the majority of movie viewers are what I'd call casual movie fans or casual movie viewers. They got like I've run out of examples of what would be on their shelves, but I think you get the idea. And so I was kind of like, oh, I don't know why I had that attitude. Maybe it just, yeah, you hear about a coworker and you're just like, okay, what's this? But anyway, to make a long story not as long, turns out Hundreds of Beavers was luckily on, I think, Prime for free if you've got a Prime membership, which my mom does, so we were able to see it for free, probably that night or whatever. And I gotta tell you, like, I might have had like some interest in seeing it because I didn't know much about it. I don't think I even ever saw a trailer, and the idea of it is actually kind of interesting because since I'm a huge movie fanatic, I'm a movie fan of just the past century of movies, going all the way back to silent film era. When I was a teenager, I was all into silent films and things, and so the idea of this is actually kind of interesting, being a silent film fan myself. Unfortunately, it just what it does with it, I'm not the kind to, I guess, take offense or be offended at anything per se, but as an actual kind of fan of the silent film era, this movie almost, yeah, it almost like, I don't know. It's almost like a kind of just thumbing its nose at the era, and first off the bat, so this is basically a movie that is more or less presents itself as like a silent film, and it is, you know, by all intents purposes a silent film in the sense that there's no or little to no, I mean, I think there's oh, actually no, there is no dialogue. The dialogue that is in the movie is you know, in the intertitles. They cut away to the card of what someone's saying. So it is technically a silent film. That doesn't mean there's no sound, there's music, there's, you know, sound effects, there's all this and that. So one thing I will give this movie props for is very much like what the artist did, you know, a decade ago or more or whatever, whenever the hell the artist did it, is it's actually like, you know, bringing into the current, you know, zeitgeist of, you know, casual movie goers lexicon. Boy, I'm really coming at you with these impressive words. The fact that it's introducing the thing that a lot of people may not even know these days in 2000, you know, the 2020s, is that silent movies were actually, they exist. They existed and they still exist, and they were the first kind of movies that ever existed. So perhaps if nothing else, perhaps movies like The Artist and this film can, you know, introduce younger generations to the you know, the treasure that is silent films, because silent films, it's a whole subgenre of movies. Like when talkies came in, they split films in half, bam. And of course, you know, you got filmmakers like Charlie Chaplin who were trying to stay silent as long as possible, because that's the only thing they knew, and they were. You know, the thing is, you think about a silent movie in today's day and age, and you think of something that's less than, or something that is like a handicapped film, if you will. But the thing is, you know, if movies started silent, that means that's what movies first were. So it's not like, you know, go back to the silent film era before there was sound films. They weren't handicapped then. That's what movies were. They were visual images that moved around without sound, and if you were lucky, there was some guy in the saloon or the theater playing on the piano or whatever and trying to sync up what he's playing to the film or whatever. So when sound came in the late 20s, early 30s, it like just went whoosh, and it just like all of a sudden there became like a second genre. Of course, everyone's just used to sound movies now, but there became like it was like in a way, probably I would imagine many filmmakers such as Charlie Chaplin thought of talkies as a perversion of this medium that they've known for you know, a decade or, you know, 2 decades or whatever the hell it was when talkies came in. It's like now it completely changes in a lot of, you know, filmmakers' points of view, and for the worst, this medium or whatever. So what I'm trying to say very long-windedly, as often is the case on this channel, is if nothing else, this movie can serve as introducing people who may not even be aware that silent films ever existed, or they still do exist, but silent films existed, that silent films were the first movies ever made, and they still exist, and they are very fun to watch if one is so inclined to do so. Like, it's an entire, I don't want to, I probably already gone on it for way too long, but it's like I said, it's an entire, silent films are entire different like subgenre of movies. But now that I said my piece on that, that's pretty much maybe the only positive thing I can say for this movie, unfortunately. I will say, being, you know, nearly 50 and never having really been like someone who's prone to ADD or ADHD, I found the opening of this movie, which is just utterly visually chaotic, you know, just mess of visual garbly-gook, I found it just to be like, holy crap, you know, just too much, overblown. And granted, you know, this is coming from, maybe I would have liked it when I was in a teenager, or, you know, in my 20s or something. This is coming from someone who's going to be 50, you know, this year in a certain amount of months or whatever. So, you know, I'm looking at it through these what's the word, the eyes of what do they call them, people? Senior citizen, you know, a senior citizen to be, or maybe some people would even call me a senior citizen now. Go for it, if that's what you want. But yeah, I found this movie to be, my main problem with the movie is like, and you don't really come across movies like that, like this, too often, where it almost seems like it's made by a high school student, in the sense that, like, when we made, you know, and this is actually a problem with a lot of independent movies and stuff, and where it's kind of like the ha ha ha, pat yourself on the back, you're so funny, as, you know, you know, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, usually, like, a good comedy or a good sense of humor is like kind of like, it's kind of like Airplane, you know, like the Zucker brothers kind of humor, where you just play it for straight and it's funny. Like, this is the exact opposite, and that kind of humor I like. This is the exact opposite in the kind of humor that I don't really go in for, which is this, like, this flamboyant, like, overly, like, oh, look at how funny I am as the movie. You know, this movie is so funny. Look at it. It's got people dressed in, you know, raccoon outfits and beaver outfits, and it keeps hammering on your head, I am so funny. Like the movie. This is the movie speaking. I am so funny. I'm such a funny movie. See, I'll have a guy dressed as a beaver slip on a banana peel. Ha ha ha. And this movie is constantly just exhaustingly drilling into the viewer, and it does it, you know, for its whole existence. And when we started it, and this opening sequence was so chaotic and just like ha ha ha, I'm so funny. And I was exhausted like 5 minutes in. I was hoping it was like an hour long, and then I paused it, and I was, you know, completely, you know, distraught to find out that it was like 90 minutes or more long, and I'm like, oh my God. And unfortunately, you know, this would be a perfect example of where if I could sleep through movies, I definitely would have liked to have slept through this movie. But, you know, I recognize that a relationship is give and take. Beth watches a lot of garbage that I want to watch, so I watch this. So, what I will say before I end the review is, basically it's 90 minutes or more, I can't remember how long it is, of just this nonsensical, like, infantile, just like, gobbledygook that is just like constantly hammering on the viewer's head. Ha ha, I'm funny, aren't I cute, aren't I funny? And it's just like so exhausting. And then before I end the review, I will mention that it seems like, you know how you've got in this generation, this day and age, you've got kids and stuff, well, probably not even kids anymore, you've probably got 20-somethings, 30-somethings who are just, you know, basically day after day locked in their bedrooms or, you know, the basement or whatever, and just online playing video games nonstop. One thing I will say about this movie is, and it's not, you know, it's not a positive or anything, it's just an observation, is this movie almost looks like it was written and or, you know, conceived, written and or directed, produced by a bunch of like game, and not even necessarily video game enthusiasts, even board games, like, or puzzle enthusiasts, because the way this movie is conceived and executed is very puzzle-like, video game problem-solving like, and the way it goes about, it's like, and you know, there's certain memory games, I can't remember what they were called, but like, you know, it just reminded me of like puzzle games, memory games, problem-solving video games, this kind of thing, where if you've seen the movie, or maybe even, I've never seen the trailer for this, I don't think, but maybe it's evident in the trailer, but if you see the movie, you'll know what I mean. Like, the whole movie is basically about, you know, problem solving, and I can't imagine, I don't even know how anyone, it's almost like, I don't even see how a human mind could even come up with all of the intricacies of, like, just all of the little minute details that maybe this movie was written by artificial intelligence, who the hell knows, but it seems awfully like if Spock wrote a movie. This is a perfect example. If Spock, if you told Spock to write a movie, and you know, and even, you know, with his you know, non-humorness, no emotionness of Spock, tell him to write a movie, you know, an interesting movie, and then make it a comedy, this is very well might be what he came up with. Not to say that there's nothing that made my mouth go, you know, briefly for a couple seconds, you know, maybe there were a couple cute things, but I want to make it very evident that this is like exactly the opposite end of my kind of humor. It's the exact opposite of the kind of humor that I like. I like the kind of humor that happens and you're like, on the surface it's not humor, but you have to have a brain to decipher it on your end as humor, kind of a thing. So on the surface, my humor looks like this, and that was funny. But you got to have a brain to decipher that was funny. This kind of humor is like sucking your thumb, frickin', you know, 6-month-old to whatever, 30-year-old nowadays, kind of just sense of humor that is so infantile, it is positively exhausting, and it's like, ha ha ha, we're so funny. And I also, one other thing I'll say before I give this movie a very abysmal star rating is another kind of a you know, thumb in the nose to the silent film era this movie did is, for all intents purposes, it takes place whenever the hell it does in I don't know what, late 1800s, early 1900s. And there's like this love interest, you know, the main movie revolves around this guy, that's all I'll say, and him trying to solve whatever. Something happens at the beginning and he tries to rebuild his life or whatever. And there's like a love interest, and I found, you know, probably my, you know, if I was the kind of person, which I'm not, to like get insulted by something, you know, in a movie, the thing that was probably most insulting, other than just the like knocking on your head every other second, or maybe even every second, I'm a funny movie, ha 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 ha, is that kind of deplorable scene where like his female love interest is all of a sudden like on a stripper pole. And you know, I'm actually of the you know, I don't get me wrong, I'm 100% heterosexual, and I've just been obsessed with the female form ever since I saw Amadeus as a kid in the mid-90s, and you know, Stanzi, Mozart, you know, what's her name, you know, with them bosoms just pushed up to, you know, and all this stuff, and also seeing Clue and what the hell ever, what, you know, the maid from Clue and things. So ever since like the mid-'80s, probably even early 80s, ever since I was like a single-digit kid, I've always been completely like just obsessed, maybe not obsessed, yeah, probably obsessed with the female form. And you know, but I've never stepped foot in a strip club. I'm not a strip club enthusiast, like that joke in the first Iron Man movie where they're on a plane and the poles, like, do they come out of the floor or the ceiling or whatever, and the stewardesses start dancing around the strip poles. Like, I've never been a strip club enthusiast, or strip pole dancer enthusiast. I think that's just so ghetto garbage, you know. So when that woman is like on a stripper pole, like, it's just like, oh my God, this movie takes, it's like taking this era, the silent film era, and just like shitting all over the silent film era. But yeah, absolutely, completely and totally. And if you like this movie, and if you generally agree with my sentiments, you know, it's like we don't have to like the same thing. If you're a fan of the channel and my videos and you like this movie, that's absolutely fine. I'm not gonna be like, get off my channel. You know, I understand that everyone's tastes are everyone's tastes. If you like this movie, I'm not gonna berate you for liking it. I'm not gonna, you know, like it. I, on the other hand, do not like it. What's my star rating? Jiminy Christmas. All I can do is like, I'll just go 1/2 of a star, 1/2 of a star out of 4 stars, only for its, if nothing else, you know, interesting technical ability. I would imagine this was a relatively low budget, you know, kind of a movie. So like on a technical note, and if you're into puzzles and puzzle movies, puzzle video games, puzzles and stuff, like, it's not completely without value. But for my opinion, like, just the I guess, if nothing else, introducing possible audiences that weren't aware that silent films exist to silent film genre. We can, you know, the movie can potentially do that. And also, like, the puzzle aspect of the movie was insane, and I don't know how anyone ever thought of it. Like, it's very possible that artificial intelligence wrote it for him, but who the hell knows. And you know, even though it like just shoves its humor down your throat, I'm not going to say there weren't, you know, maybe a couple moments that were actually funny. I can't remember. It was mostly, and the thing about the movie and the humor in the movie, talk about repetitive humor, you know, it's just like the same humor over and over and over. you know, and I was just like, God, this is like written by an insane person, you know. So that's my review. It went on way too long, longer than I intended, but that's my review of whatever it's called, Hundreds of Beavers. And one thing I did think, one of the most creative aspects of the movie was the fact that the title came up, what was it, halfway through or even further into the movie, like the title came up and it was through spoken dialogue, which of course is cut to the, you know, the intertitle or whatever of the words, and it was like, and I think the copyright was under the bottom, like it took the half the movie or more for the title to come up, and it was spoken through the, you know, the dialogue, which is in print. And you know, that aspect was probably one of my favorite aspects of the movie or whatever. So not completely devoid of creativity, but the way this just hammers on the viewer nonstop, like I'm funny and you better believe it, just got like 5 minutes in I was exhausted. It got instantly annoying. So I guess that does it for my review of this film. I can't recommend it more or less at all. If you want to see just like absolutely like exhausting exercise in visual whatever, visual fuckery or whatever, just if you want to see it, if you don't have ADHD and you want to see if you can get it, you know, watch this movie or whatever. But it's just a exhausting thing. So I'm glad I never have to see it again. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, we'll catch you on the next video.